Hello again, folks. Just a little follow-up on the whole recent hot start issue, which was solved. It definitely was this culprit. Cheap, made in China ignition coil. Steel case on it instead of a polymer case. It only has a 1-year warranty. Yeah, it didn't even last me 2 years. In fact, it probably only lasted 6 months. I'll explain why. But when I was rebuilding the ignition system, putting all new parts on it, this was one of the new parts. The only part I really absolutely cheaped out on. And here's the thing. Ignition coils like this, it's got windings in it. I'm just going to talk about the primary winding. The secondary winding has nothing to do with it. You got your plus and your minus. 12-volt power in, and that's ground. This ground is hooked to the C post on the ignition module. There's a power transistor in here that switches on and off. It switches this on and off, which switches the coil on and off. When it switches on, it powers up. When it switches off, there's a magnetic field in here that collapses and discharges all your energy out the center port to your distributor. If you want to know how an ignition coil works, look it up. That's as far as I'm going to go into it. But that's, just so you know, that's what it does. I got this module when I was doing the ignition system, brand new. It's a standard motor parts T-Series LX301T. And when it came in, I was super happy because I saw this. Made in the U.S. Thinking, hey, lucked out. This wasn't all that expensive either. It was like $13. Not bad. So put it in there, got everything done, got the truck fired up and running. It was running fine. 6 months after I did that, I started having idle problems, idle inconsistency. It was driving me absolutely crazy. Clean the carb, adjust the carb, check this, check that. Nothing seemed to help. It didn't help that I also seemed to have a bit of a problem with the linkage on the gas pedal. I think it might be a little worn. It's got a little notchy spot in it. I thought maybe it was messing with the position of the throttle plates. Because, you take your foot off the gas, that'll be good. Take your foot off the gas another time, it would be low, terrible, and threaten to die on you. Rev it up a couple of times, or you just slap the pedal a couple of times and it would come up. So I figured it was the linkage. Apparently not. Apparently this coil, after only 6 months, was going bad. The wire on the primary windings in there is coated, insulated. You may have seen this before if you've messed with electronics or anything else. It's a thin wire. It's got sort of like an enamel kind of coating or something like that on it. Apparently the Chinese made stuff that used substandard materials, which I should know. And there's a fair amount of heat under the hood, and this coil takes some heat. And with the steel case on this, it was absorbing heat and directing it into the coil. Not a good thing. That's why better coils have a polymer case. It doesn't absorb as much heat. It's actually a little reflective. Some even have glass fiber-filled cases, if you can believe that. So what happens is it gets hot, that enamel melts. Some of those coils start shorting against each other, which actually raises the resistance in this coil. Wow, why is that important? Here's why it's important. Because since you got battery power into the module here, and you've got the ground basically here, it's actually causing this module to work harder than it needs to. These modules are made originally for General Motors H.E.I, High Energy Ignition Systems, introduced in 1974 generally, and pretty much used up until the early 90s in one form or another, until GM came out with its distributorless ignition, a direct ignition. It doesn't have a distributor cap and a rotor and something that turns. no moving parts. And this replaced the point system, if you know what that is. This just basically replaces your points, in a sense, by switching the coil on and off and firing the plug at the right time. But when that resistance in the coil goes up, it actually pulls more power into this module. You don't need but maybe 6 volts tops to do this. Okay? When it's switching on and off, it's switching on and off this one tab, like I said, and it's switching off that primary side. If that primary side resistance goes up, it makes this module's job a lot harder. It's kind of like a switch that moves really easy, that's low resistance. Switch that's like hard to move, that's more resistance. It's causing a lot of stress in here, in these electronic components, which really is just a capacitor, a couple resistors, and a power switching transistor. If you know what that is. I'm just putting it out there for those of you who know. So basically the problem is it overworks the module, and it overworked the module to the point after 6 months it was idling not so good. Idle was inconsistent. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was bad. Sometimes it would just die on me sitting still idling and then start right away. Very confusing. Didn't think about testing the coil back then. I just went ahead and bought another one of these and plopped it in there, and everything was fine. And then a little while later I started getting the bad idle again, and I lived with it, I put up with it, figuring it was just a linkage. And then for the past 8-9 months I've been dealing with that hard to start hot issue, where it just wouldn't start. You have to let it sit for 20-30 minutes, and then it would start up. Well, see, as this thing gets stressed, its resistance goes up too, because all the extra power is creating a lot of heat. And the heat from the engine in the engine bay soaks into it. You just can't avoid some of it, no matter what you do. So it had to cool down to a point where the resistance would drop. When resistors get hot, their normal resistance goes up. Now, I should have known this, and I should have thought of this, because I had this problem before. In this truck, it's got an electric fuel pump in the tank. There's something called a fuel pump resistor. It's in the electrical line that goes to the fuel pump. The resistor is actually mounted in the engine compartment. And I've got it here somewhere. Here it is. See this white thing here? That's the original resistor. It's a ceramic power resistor. It's rated for 1.4 ohms and 10 watts. I suspected this was a problem because I wasn't getting a good fuel supply at the time. Pulled it out, hooked the meter up to it, and just kind of held a lighter under it for a little while, and I watched the meter resistance go up and up and up and up, and it went all the way up to almost 4 ohms. That's a lot. That's a lot for this kind of circuit. And like you may have seen in the other video, the baseline spec on the primary resistance here to here is 1.3 to 1.7 ohms. Hot, this thing was reading 3.8. I let it cool down for several hours until it was dead cold and was reading 3.2. So see, as it gets hot, the resistance goes up. And even worse, if there's a problem with shorts in those coils, because the insulation is going away. So this is the original one I took over after 6 months. I just I kept it because I figured, well, maybe it's not bad. I'll just hold on to it. But having the exact same problem with the other one. I've got low speed is a problem, idle is a problem. You get your foot into it and run it. Anything above idle, it runs beautiful. No skip, no miss, no bog, no cutout, no problem. Well, why? Well, you're turning the engine faster, you're turning the alternator a little bit faster, and you're actually shoving electrical energy into this thing, and it's overcoming that resistance. and it functions as normal. Heat it up and the resistance is still high. You get off it, you try to idle. You've got minimal charging voltage going on, which is like 3.1, 3.2. And if that's not quite enough to overcome all the resistance going on in there, which is why it's intermittent, it's weird. So I took this little bugger, and I'll give them a free plug. I went to O'Reilly's. They can test these for you for free. They have a machine to do this. He plugged it in, tested it, came back 8 minutes later and said, quote, "It tests bad on the low RPM side." My brain went, ah, frickin' ha. That makes sense. It failed that way and was failing on the low side, but still working on the high side. The other one that's in there that's just like it, same part number and everything, is doing exactly the same thing. Which is why now I know, after 6 months of this being new, from new to 6 months, this was going bad. And this fried out that. Amazing what you learn. Just a little more information. Standard Motor Parts is a good company. Okay, I'm not slamming them, I'm not putting them down. But they do something that is pretty common in the automotive industry that you ought to know about. A lot of companies that make parts make several different lines of parts. Okay, they'll make your economy line, they'll make a mid line, and they'll make a best of line. The best of line always has some sort of fancy name on it. As far like standard goes, they only make 2 lines. They make an economy line and they make a top of the line. The T series is the economy line. It's not the cheapest of the cheap. There's cheaper ones out there made by other companies. They make a top of the line one, and it's got a name of Blue Streak on it. Woohoo. Makes it go faster just because of the name, right? It's like putting turbo in the car, you know. A magic marker. So there's the thing. Even though it is made in the U.S., and it's only got a 1-year warranty, and there's a clue if you're looking at parts. 1-year warranty, don't trust it that much, especially for ignition parts. You don't want to cheap out on it. The one I got coming is actually the big brother to this. Okay, the original part number is LX301 without the T. That's the top of the line model. The T is the, T series. Ta-da, makes sense, right? So, this was $13. Rock Auto price, which is still best price you can find. The 301 without the T, the top of the line one, is just under $21. It's about $8 more. Well, that's 33% more. Well, yeah, it's only $21 though. And it's got a 3-year warranty. Plus, I've been doing some research on these things and how they're made and what the differences are in the different lines. I can give you all kinds of boring and detailed information, and maybe I'll make a different video about that sometime in the future. I don't know. But just basic stuff. You see how it's just got these little dimples here? That's just little spot welds that they put on there. For the medium lines and the low lines, that's all you're going to see. For the better ones, if you flip these over and you look on the back, you'll see a little rectangle with a lot of little lines in it. That's actually a sonic weld. It's better. It's welded better. This is only welded in 3 little spots, and this plate in the back is supposed to be your negative, your ground. Bolt that goes through here actually grounds it. There's a sleeve that goes all the way to the bottom. So, yeah, you got all that good connection here, but it's only getting into the module electronics through these little points. That square, let's see if I can show you this. That sonically welded square on the back of the good ones is like from this hole over to here. And if you take that line and come down, it's about that tall. And every one of these little lines that are going to be in here are weld. A lot more surface area than these three little welds. Better conductance of electricity. It can pull better current without getting stressed just by pulling high current through these little points. This just has a steel base plate. It's been treated so it doesn't rust, of course, but that's all it's got. The better ones actually have a copper slug inside this black casing. Copper is a great heat conductor and will conduct heat away from it into the steel and then out. And as you've seen my setup, I have an AC Delco aluminum heatsink on there. So that should help. The copper slug in there is a lot better. Also, the components in here, they have little trace wires going from one to another, and they're boop, boop, soldered down. For the midline, that's normal. For the top of the line, they have double feed lines on every component. So if one actually vibrated loose from or the solder joint broke or one of the wires broke, the other wire's still there. And they actually make those wires in those thicker than GM made their originals. So again, it can conduct more current without getting heated up and getting stressed and breaking down. All that for only $8 more? Yeah. LX301 regular on order from Rock Auto, on its way. Should be here Monday. Today's Saturday. Not fooling around anymore. So we're going to get that in and see what that does. And if it straightens out the idle problem, I will be happier than a pig in you-know-what. Can't say what that really means on YouTube because we don't want to get suspended. You know what I mean. But yeah, we're going to get the best of the best on this. And it was only, with a discount and first class mail, it was under $23 delivered. I can't argue. Exact same, just in case you need to get it now and not wait for the mail. And I should have done this, but AutoZone has one like this. It's exact same type. It's under the Duralast name, which is their house name. It actually is a top-of-the-line part. Okay, it's made by Airtex Wells. Wells makes really, really good stuff. And in my investigation, that module is actually one of the best they make. And over the counter, it's like $24. And you can have it today. $23.99 in tax. And almost any AutoZone store in the country is going to stock it in store, not special order. Don't have to wait. Pay for it and go. Change it right in the parking lot in 10 minutes and you're running again. So if you run across that and you need one, you can get one right now at AutoZone. All the stores stock it. I've checked. Hopefully that helps somebody out there. So there you go. The hard hot start issue is solved. The Coil did solve it. I got a dozen hot starts under my belt from the drive test yesterday and the drive test today and the drive test Thursday. And the results of those tests started leading me to believe that this module was going to get cooked, was getting kind of cooked, and that's why the idle was weird, and that's why I got that going on. But it did start every time. Only one time out of 11 did it take a little more than a second of crank before it started. The rest of the time it was half a second and it started right up. So this booger was the cause of the hard start issue. Yeah, no more Chinese coils. Never again. Forget it. So there you go. There's the update on it. That finishes the hot start stuff. I've got a few other videos coming. I've actually got how to test a coil. If you've got a voltage ohm meter, you can get this little cheap one at Harbor Freight for free this month, with any purchase. Otherwise, they're like $5 or $6. Well worth it. And I teach you how to test the primary resistance and how to test the secondary resistance to see if it's in spec. You'll have to look up the specifications for your vehicle and what your coil is supposed to be. If you're diligent on the web, you can find it. not that big of an issue. Then that's because that's what I did. And hey, I've got a 40-year-old truck, and I was able to find the spec on it. Because just digging on the web until I found it. It took me half an hour, but I found the specs. If you go get the manual, it's in the manual. A lot easier. Spend the $20 or less and get the Haynes manual. It'll have it. Again, solving mechanical issues, information is number one. It's the biggest help you're going to have. So there we go. That's the end of the story about that. I got an ignition coil test video coming, as I said. I've got detailed information about the 20R carb, especially desmog like I have it, showing you where all the adjustments are, what screw does what vacuum line goes where. And that's all the backlog I have. I'm only 3 or 4 videos out, and I'll be current. But hopefully you've been watching this, and it's been some help to you, and you've at least been learning something or stashing the info away in your head for future use. Just hope it helps somebody out there. If you got something similar, hopefully it's going to help you figure out your problem. Thanks again for watching. Appreciate everybody coming by. I appreciate people that have been subscribing lately. You're all their tops. Number one. But not China number one. No, China number one. Sorry, guys. Make your stuff better. Maybe I'll give you a recommendation in the future, but don't hold your breath. Thanks again for watching. See you all later.